mai ha kua ku muri muri whakatase e tau whakaholo anga te tolu ha koe whewhi ua gare to la kau hile whalu to mga aho mo inga kai miteki ko mroa tua ia koe lilifu ikipore ke whakatutala e mto tolu he awhiawhi nei ko ia e ikipore Hon Aupito Willam Sio. Si ko ia e ikipore ne kua o kioki mai he katofa anghana ko e ikipore Minister for Pacific Peoples. Si lahi whakawe kua mea ke ia ke whakalataha mo tautolu he awhiawhi nei ke tutala mo ia. And we have with us this afternoon the Honourable Aupito Willam Sio, former Minister for Pacific Peoples. And as we all know, he gave his valedictory speech last week, and he's with us this afternoon just to talk to us about some of the highlights of his career and a few other things that have been sort of the highlight of his career as the Minister for Pacific Peoples. So without further ado, can I just say, whakalofale atu, Honourable Minister, malolo na rai.
To Farmer and to all of our Niuean community who are listening into our program. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, it's 15 years and 15 years of your illustrious years in politics under Jacinda Ardern and later Chris Hipkins. What were some of your memorable moments in office, as well as challenging situations during your time as the Minister for Pacific Peoples, Minister?
Oh, everything about my time there was
I know,
memorable.
we can talk all day about them, but I'm sure there must be some that stand out for you.
Yeah, I think the things that I'll always remember is the opportunity to raise pride and empower young Pacific public servants and to encourage them about always remembering their role and their responsibility to our community. Increasing the funding and the significant investment from a small ministry that was operating on about 9 million in 2017 and increasing the targeted funding to Pacific over a number of government agencies to almost 700 million when I left office. Being able to represent our communities internationally and to support, help to amplify the voice of the Pacific region at the global level, at the UN General Assembly, at the Pacific Island Forum, at our Oceans Conference in a number of different nations. Those are significant to stand out. And of course, the finale was the Dawn Raid's apology, and then you getting the blessing from Ngati Whātua Rakai and the involvement of our Pacific communities to make that a genuine and authentic apology for our communities all stand out. But mostly the way our communities rallied around supporting one another during the COVID pandemic, it's another standout period. So lots of things that I take with me as memories of those opportunities I've had to serve our communities.
Well, I think you've forged the way for our Pacific people, and awareness also that you achieved along the way. Myself included, with other people, would say that you've been one of the most proactive ministers for Pacific peoples in a long time. And, like I mentioned, we could spend all afternoon talking about what you have achieved. And a lot of it was significant, as you've mentioned, and I think also that you have maintained a good connection with not only our Pacific communities here in Aotearoa, but also in the Pacific. And, and that's quite significant that you were there looking at areas of economic development and assistance for our Pacifica nations. I know you went to Niue a couple of times and spent some time there. And, that was also quite significant that you managed to spend I think it was last year, the Constitution celebrations that
I
you
was
were
there
there.
last year
Yes.
in Niue, representing our government, and was one of the keynote speakers at the invitation of the Premier and the Parliament of Niue. Just absolutely, I got the opportunity to open up some projects that our New Zealand High Commissioner have been supporting, notably the Hapuku Women's Meeting House.
Mm, mm.
Um, and it was just wonderful. Was there on the ocean as they kicked off the Wakaama race.
Yes.
Uh, some people were trying to get me into the paddle. I thought the minute I get into that water, it's going to be hard coming out. And just the tremendous, gorgeous food that my colleagues from America and Japan and the other diplomats just loved
Yes.
was fantastic. And I'm preparing, if I can't get there for this Constitution, certainly next year is the 50th
Next year is the big one.
anniversary.
Yes, absolutely. You must go to Niue and join us there. But you were also instrumental as the face of our government here, as the face of the assistance provided by the New Zealand government for the COVID-19 pandemic in Niue with the vaccinations and the booster shots and the awareness campaigns. And that was only
Yes.
like yesterday,
Yeah.
and that was quite a significant step in our history, not only with the COVID-19, but also all those other things that we needed to do to protect our people in terms of the COVID-19 vaccinations, the booster shots. But you were there, and you had been the face of the assistance provided by the New Zealand government. So I'm sure you must have
Yeah.
been happy with the outcome, with 94%, eventually 94% of the population of Niue being fully vaccinated and had their booster shots.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I had delegation to oversee the work that we were doing through the Polynesian Health Corridor.
Mm.
So it was around island countries, Samoa, Tonga, Tuvalu, and of course Fiji, and making sure that they got access to the vaccine, making sure that their small health systems got supported through our health system. And I just really want to thank the Minister of Health that was responsible at the time, as well as the staff on the ground, because I know how nervous the government and the people of Niue about the pandemic. And it was quite challenging also when we had people who passed away here who wanted to go home and have their loved ones be buried in the islands. Really, really challenging times.
Mm.
But
Mm.
in the end, I think what we did was prioritize lives, and which is what we done. And high vaccination, and that's credit to the people on the ground in Niue. Small workforce, but nonetheless, the work that they did was really, really crucial.
Mm. Well, you probably know that COVID-19 is back in Niue with up to about 30 people with it. But
Yeah.
it's not so bad in terms of the experience of the people, the health department gained from the previous COVID-19 experience that has enabled them to manage what is going on at the moment more reliably than in the past. So it's like catching the flu in some cases, but still they need to be careful. So
It's deadly because our communities are vulnerable.
yes.
The term the clinicians use is comorbidities, meaning, we have diabetes, we have gout, we have high blood pressure, we have heart disease. All of those things make us really, really vulnerable to COVID, to a number of other illnesses. So vaccination, looking after yourself, making sure that if you're sick to stay home. All of the usual things that we talked about in the early days, they become more relevant even today.
Absolutely, absolutely. If we can just delve a bit more into the issue of climate change, Minister. You've always been a strong advocate of climate change, and you've seen firsthand the impacts of climate change throughout the Pacific, especially in low-lying nations such as Kiribati and Tuvalu, to mention a few. Do you think that New Zealand will be in a position long-term not only to help counter the impact of climate change in the Pacific, but also to resettle perhaps some of the people that are impacted by the climate change? And I think that at one stage they were referred to as climate refugees from the Pacific.
Yeah, it's not just New Zealand. I think New Zealand is heading in the right direction. But the reality is one of the reasons why I raised climate change as part of my valedictory speech, that more work has to be done, is because at the international level, we're now at boiling point. So New Zealand has a role to play in amplifying and championing the needs of the Pacific when it comes to climate change. In 2019, I had the opportunity of supporting the Prime Minister and working with Pacific Island Forum at the United Nations General Assembly. And I learned there that most of those wealthy nations can't see the Pacific. They're dots on a map. In fact, I know one of our Pacific leaders got quite angry with one superpower who turned up with a map, and there were islands missing from the map. So, that's the challenge. So it's not just New Zealand, it's the whole world, particularly the big polluters, that must reduce their carbon emissions. And when you have the General Secretary of the UN say that we are at boiling point, that's serious. And you see that in our oceans. And so in 2027, Australia will be hosting COP27, I think. That's going to be an important COP. And I think all the leaders, despite initial reservations with Australia hosting that, have agreed that to support that. And I think whatever failures or whatever areas that New Zealand and Australia might need improvement, I think that's the time that the global community and global science community will have all eyes on it. And I think it's going to be good for the Pacific. It draws attention to what is happening to small island states like Tuvalu, like Kiribati, like Marshall Islands, and the coastal erosions that's happening in all of our islands.
Absolutely. So, Minister, if we can touch on the current situation here in New Zealand with our total population of Pacific peoples that have grown and grown, over the years. Of course, you well know that the standing of the populations for our Pacific countries here in New Zealand has been quite significant. And you've been instrumental in developing the Pacific Languages Strategy to help our people maintain our languages and culture and customs as well. What are your thoughts on that for the long term, and how beneficial will that be for us all, Pacifica people here in Aotearoa?
Extremely important. And as that strategy, all of government Pacific Language Strategy, the first of its kind, we have to embed that as a normal, natural part of government policy, not just, the responsibility of the Ministry for Pacific Peoples, but everybody's responsibility, including the Ministry of Education. That was the next step. We having a Pacific bilingual language education policy making sure that we have enough staff to be able to teach it, making sure that we're funding Pacific bilingual language education units throughout the education system. And of course, extending that into our media so that we're hearing our language spoken, not just on PMN, but across a number of networks, and that we're able to see ourselves, tell our stories in our languages on big screens, on TV. That requires ongoing funding and support and growing our workforce. But I'm optimistic that we have laid the foundation of the Pacific language strategy as well as Pacific well-being strategy. And so government departments just now need to implement it. Our communities need to participate and be part of that, and taking and providing the leadership through each of the language week. And we can't rest on our laurels because we do live in a nation that is predominantly English speaking, but we have to think about our young people coming through. And at some stage, we've also got to link up with the home island, because those, should be able to share that information. So education is the next step. Media, all of those linkages are going to be important. And of course, I'm expecting that our traditional leaders, our elders, continue to provide the leadership and the championing role that they have done for every language week.
Absolutely. That has been very beneficial for all of our Pacifica nations in terms of holding on to our wangahau and ngangana, and it's kind of like important for future generations, as you mentioned, to ensure that our young generations have access to learning their native languages as well. So just to wrap up, Minister, do you have any final thoughts in terms of your career as the Minister for Pacific Peoples, in terms of some of the things that really stand out for you, and some of the things that you might have wanted to do but didn't have time to get to it, before we wrap up?
Oh, look, I think my valedictory is the message. I dressed up in my tuinga, my ula ngifo, my tapa, holding my fue, and my ula fala, symbols of authority and symbols of who I am, showing my tattoo. And that was about giving confidence to people that look like me, tall, dark, and handsome, to be confident in who they are. I did say to our young people in particular to be proud of who you are. And even if you didn't understand the culture and the language, it's important that you learn and pursue it and nurture it and take it wherever you are. And I think my whole life I've attempted to be proud of who I am, to give license to everyone else to be proud of who they are. I think you'll see in my speech also, as I made reference to immigration matters, immigration settings that remain incomplete, and largely because of a number of different things, the pandemic, the slow pace, and people not understanding that the Pacific, we have to ring fence the Pacific and look upon the Pacific with a different pair of eyes. They are our family. And we have to accept what Nanaia Mahuta has laid, those principles of whanaungatanga, kaitiakitanga, and arohatanga. It's not just words to memorize, but they are how we live those words and apply it. And so I don't have any regrets, Farmer. All I can say is I'm very, very grateful to our community for their love and support. And I hope that I've made them proud. And I hope for our young people, because the work never ends, is that I've been able to inspire them to not be afraid and to be who they are and to speak up and to use their voices to champion and advocate for the benefit of all our communities and not just for individuals.
Just one final question from me, Aupito. Um, After October, where are you heading to in terms of once you leave Parliament? Do you have any plans for the future, if I might ask?
I'll be unemployed, so I'll be looking for a job. I'm still doing some work for the Minister for Pacific Health and supporting Pacific Health ministers around the region. So I'll be doing a bit of travel next month to attend the Pacific Health Ministers meeting, and I want to see that to the end. And then I'll be doing some training for Institute of Directors training, just because I want to know how that's done. I've been spending all these years in governance, but I also want to add my twist on it, the Pacific lens in that kind of training. And then I want to take time out. So, but essentially I'll be unemployed. So if you've got any hint, anybody out there with a job, I'm keen to look at it. A lot of people have offered me a number of things I can do, and I'll just say yes. But at some stage I've got to settle down. I do need to take some time.
I'm sure, Minister, that you will have no problems in landing a role for yourself, whether it be here locally or in the diplomatic corps, wherever that may lead you. But I just want to thank you so much for all the work and everything that you've achieved in the time that you have been our Minister for Pacific Peoples. And, we can talk all day, all night about those achievements that you've made for and on behalf of our Pacific people here in New Zealand and also in the Pacific region. So thank you very much. We wish you well with your future endeavours. And thank you so much for giving us some of your valuable time for us this afternoon to talk to you.
Thank you. I do want to pay tribute and thank everybody, and including the people on the rock itself, government, MPs, all of our members and papas. Really appreciate love and support. I'll still be around, so we'll see you again.
Okay.